Ngayong araw na to, 573 na po, kulang-kulang 600.
Towns and
yung
cities.
municipalities and cities na kung saan nagsasubmit yung mga proponents ng mga signature forms na naglalaman ng mga signatures ng ating mga botante. So what do we mean by that? Meron na po ba tayong People's Initiative petition or whatever? Wala pa po. Again, wala pa po. Purely preliminary po or preliminaries yung nangyayari. Ang ibig sabihin, nagsasubmit sila sa aming mga local Comelec sa iba't ibang bayan o syudad na part ng mismong distrito at sinasabit po nila yung mga signatures only for the purpose of the Comelec safekeeping these signatures, and you will be able to get a certification from our Comelec as to the number of signatures na natanggap po nila. Say for example, in this municipality, ang pinareceive po sa local Comelec namin 5,000. Binilang manually lang po ng aming local Comelec kung talagang 5,000. Our local Comelec will just issue a one-piece certification certifying that his office received 5,000 signatures from Mr. So or Miss So. So, yun po yung ibibigay sa kanya. Sure po na yung mismong certification na yon, in the event that they will really proceed with the filing of a petition for a People's Initiative, it will form part as an annex or as an attachment doon sa petition na yan. So kailangan po nila yung annex na yon. Otherwise, the petition will not be declared sufficient in form, kahit doon sa form, and then later on in substance. So meaning to say, they will have to submit all of these signatures in all the municipalities or cities that will constitute the district. Take note, we have all in all po 253 districts nationwide.
Apo.
Ngayon po, hindi nangangahulugan, palagay ko, hindi nangangahulugan na kinuhanan nila lahat yung municipalities or cities in that particular district. Take note, 3% lang po ang kailangan ng proponent para po mag-proceed sa distrito na yon. So, if I am able to get 3% in just one municipality, that's enough. If I am able to get the 3% in two municipalities, that's enough. So, yung pong sinasabi ko kanina na 573 may constitute several districts already.
Targetin, bale po parang kung ikaw gagawa nito, tatargetin mo yung populated areas kung saan mas madaling kumuha ng pirma, and you can get the 3% of the district.
Meaning to say, kahit titulo mo na sa Metro Manila and Luzon, I guess, no? They don't have to go far. Ganun po ba yun?
Yes, sir.
Chairman?
Yes, sir. So, but ang mangyayari po, sigurado kung depende sa strategy ng proponent, sigurado po na kung halimbawa 10 municipalities and one city itong distrito ko, baka ako pupunta sa iba pong bayan, baka po mahirapan pa ako. So, magpo-focus na lang ako, nabanggit po ni Sir Ed, sa highly populated area. And doon na lang po kukuha ng 3% ko. Baka nga, hindi lang 3, baka nga 5% pa. Kasi ang liit lang po, Sir Ed, Sir Patrick, ng 3%. Take note, under the Constitution, ng isang distrito, 250,000 na ang population. So sabihin na po natin na may 100,000 na voting population yung distrito, 3% lang po yun, 3,000 lang po yun. Ang dali pong kuhanin kung technically. But you must be able to get 12% in the entire country.
Of the aggregate?
Okay.
Of the aggregate. And the reality is, even if you are able to get 20%, for example, in the entire country, we have 68 million nationwide as registered voters. Kung isang distrito lang sa 253 na walang 3%, the entire petition will have to fail.
Okay, Chairman, do these signature forms indicate what they are for? I mean, yung mga pumirma ba, alam nila para saan itong mga pirma nila?
Well, yun po, hindi natin alam kung talagang naintindihan ng mga pumirma yung pong kanilang pinirmahan, but nakita po natin sa social media, may mga pictures at sinabi rin po sa atin ng mga local Comelec natin, may nakalagay po doon na provision that they wanted to change, and that's Article 17, Section 2 of the Constitution, o Section 1, paragraph letter B of the Constitution, yung sinasabi that the Constitution can be amended or revised via a constituent assembly voting jointly upon the call of the Senate President or the Speaker of the House. So ngayon ang nakalagay lang po presently doon by a constituent assembly. So yun lang po. So dinagdagan po nila doon sa kanilang proposal. So as to whether the people really understood what they have signed, that is something for the Comelec later on to determine once the proper petition is filed. Now, papusid lang po ako sandali-sandali doon sa next step na mangyayari para po expect ng mga kababayan natin. So kung nakakolekta na po yung mga yung proponents na yan ng sa palagay nila 3 or more than 3% per legislative district, they will have to file now a formal petition before the Comelec. They will have to attach everything and allege everything. The Comelec now, upon receipt of this petition, will have to determine sufficiency in form and substance. For example, naandyan ba yung certification tungkol sa total number of registered voters entire country or per district? Number 2, naandyan ba yung declaration kung sino yung mga petitioners dito, yung address ng etc. Substance, nakalagay pa talaga yung provision ng Constitution na gusto nilang baguhin. If the Comelec is satisfied na accomplish yung mga requirements na hinihingi natin, ministerial po yung duty namin, we'll just declare that the petition is sufficient in form and substance. Yun na pa yun? Tapos na kaagad? Hindi po. When the Comelec and Bank will determine sufficiency in form and substance, Sir Patrick, Sir Ed, we will now authorize our local Comelec to proceed with the verification of signatures. That is the only time that they will look into the 5,000 signatures that they received several weeks ago or several months ago. They will have to proceed and determine, number 1, botante ba talaga yan? Number 2, signature ba talaga ng botante yan based from our records? So, i-compare dun sa records natin. So, madami pong posibilidad na may mawala pang sa listahan dahil hindi botante, dahil hindi niya signatures yan, o baka naman nabili yung may mga ebidensya talaga nagpapatunay nabili yung kanyang pirma o tinakot siya o na-terrorize siya. So, pwede pa pong mabawasan yung mga signatures na meron kami. And then after that, magse-certify yung mga local Comelec namin as to how many signatures were left after the conduct of the verification. Doon namin malalaman ngayon, pag sinentralize na sa amin, na-compute namin, kung nakuha ang 3% and 12% in the entire country.
Okay, and after that, tapusin nyo
And
na.
after that po, we are given only up to 60 days, not earlier than 60 days, but not more than 90 days to conduct the plebiscite. Plebiscite po. Alam niyo po sa ating saligang batas, whether it is Constitutional Convention, Constituent Assembly, or People's Initiative, the end result will always be a plebiscite. You will have to ask the people yes or no. Are you amenable to the proposed amendment? Ngayon po, kung ang proponent ang tatanungin, dapat po, sabi ng saligang batas, ang makuha dapat ng yes ay majority of the votes cast. Ang taas po nun. Ano po yung majority of the votes cast? 68 million ang botante natin. Ang nakaboto lamang sa plebisito, 50 million. Ang dapat na makuha ng yes is 25 million plus 1 votes in order to declare them as winner and the Constitution will be amended.
So, Chairman, it's a long and tedious process. Sabi nga nila, this is not the easiest way to amend the Constitution. Tama po ba, di ba? So, when are we looking at a possible plebiscite, theoretically, hypothetically?
Sir Patrick, hindi ko po mabanggit ang exact date. Depende po kung kailan sila magpa-file o magpa-file pa ba sila ng petition. Nakadepende po lahat. Meaning to say the trigger, the trigger of the all preparations and perhaps the computation of the date will start from the date of the filing. Hindi po natin alam kung magpa-file sila this month o magpa-file sila next month. So it depends po sa kanila po. So technically po, you will be needing in the entire process mga more or less 5 to 6 months.
Does this complicate the Comelec's work? The need to have midterm elections in 2025? I mean,
definitely, Sir Patrick, definitely. Try to imagine we are now preparing for the 2025 automated national and local election. You see po, pag nagpe-prepare ka ng isang national and local elections na automated, you need at least 1 year before the actual date of the election to prepare. Number 2, we are preparing also, for your information, the barangay and SK elections of 2025. Sabay po yun sa isang taon. So 5 months lang po ang pagitan. Isang May at saka po isang December. We are now preparing for our resumption of registration of voters by February 12 to September 30. Napaka-extensive po niyan. Meron din po tayong overseas registration. We are likewise preparing for the plebiscite in Marawi City for the creation of 3 barangays and the 63 barangays dito naman po sa Bangsamoro. So medyo punong-puno po yung aming plato sa kasalukuyan.
Pero kaya or kakayanin?
We
I
have
guess
no
wala
choice
kang
because
choice.
this is our duty under the Constitution. We will have to do our job. But again, we are so pressed for time and the schedule is so tight at this point po.
Chairman, I can imagine ang pinakamahirap na trabaho ninyo dito sa isyong ito, yung verification. I'd like to ask, kasi you're looking at what, 8.3 million votes, more or less. I'd like to ask if you have the capacity and the capability to go through each and every signature to verify the veracity of each signature. Kasi sa huli po, doon po babagsak yun. Ito ba'y totoong tao? Ito ba talaga yung botante? Ito ba'y peke?
Yes, Sir Ed, that's the right and proper question. But take note po, hindi po centralized ang verification ng signatures. Lucky for us that under the 2020 rules on the verification of signatures in a people's initiative, it was decentralized. So meaning to say, our local Comelec will be the one to verify the signatures. Although, quite easy because under the rules, the same rules, which was never questioned since 2020, under the same rules po, i-compare lang po ng aming election officer yung pong signature ng botante doon sa voters registration record that we have and doon po sa signature niya dito po sa mismong signature form na sinabit sa amin. At depende po doon sa number of signatures submitted in election officer. So hindi naman po ganun kahaba ang panahon, but of course we will always require our election officers to be very, very careful in declaring one signature as void
As valid.
or in saying, oy, tama yan. Kasi kinakailangan naman po, siguraduhin namin mabuti. Remember, we are going to amend the Constitution in the first place.
Chairman, you're talking about election officers. Are we talking about municipal and city election officers? In which case, how many, I don't know, how many people do they have to, or how many signatures would they have to take care of on the average, kung sakali?
Basta po, Sir Ed, we have one election officer per municipality, one election officer per city, and we have other election assistants and other employees in the office of the election officer. So practically po, if we have 1,600 municipalities nationwide plus yung cities, then mga 1,900. But of course, sabi ko nga po sa inyo kanina, sa simula pa lang, maybe yung proponent, hindi naman niya kinuhanan yung lahat ng mga municipalities ng distrito. So, baka nakakonsentrate lang siya sa isang city. In that case, then masyadong madaming trabaho ng aming local Comelec doon sa city or municipality kung saan nag-concentrate ng pag-kolekta ng signatures.
Chairman, yung pag-verify ho ba, kasi of course, you're looking at the physical signature doon sa signature forms na ibibigay nila o binigay nila. Saan yan ibabangga? On a digital, against a digital copy that Comelec has or the election officer has, or a physical copy doon sa pinirmahan nila nung sila nag-register as voter? In
Yes,
other words,
sir.
are we looking at digital copies or are we looking at paper to paper?
We have the copies po yung binanggit nyo, yung pong voters registration record. If you can still remember, at the time that you registered yourself as a voter, nag-accomplish po kayo, nandun po yung mga signatures nyo. And at the same time, meron din po kami, Sir Patrick, na EDCVL ang tawag natin dyan, Election Day Computerized Voters List. If you can still remember, nung election ng barangay and SK elections, when all of us have voted, meron po tayong na-fill upan o pinirmahan sa loob ng presinto bago po tayo umalis. And that's the EDCBL. Nandun yung signature ng botante, and at the same time, meron po kaming original signature din na nandun po sa voters registration record. So quite easily, our election officers can just compare all of these signatures.
Sir, but what about the question of whether or not the voter or the signer, signatory ba? Sorry, whether the signatory did so on his own volition and he did so in an informed capacity. Is there any way or to verify that, or that is already beyond the scope of Comelec?
Well, pag tinignan niyo po yung guidelines, parang beyond the scope of the Comelec. But again, as I have told you, we will not, hindi po tayo papayag ng ganun-ganun lang. Kasi po, silent naman yung rules namin. So sa amin, a voter can just withdraw his signature. It's a free country. Hindi naman siya pinilit. Kung hindi siya pinilit na pumirma, hindi rin siya pwedeng pigilan na withdrawin yung kanyang signature during the verification part. Or at the same time, anybody can present evidence to our local Comelec saying this signature was taken using public funds or private funds, as the case may be, and therefore hindi to free consent of the signatory. So pwede pong mga ganon dahil hindi naman po ang purpose ng verification is just comparison. The purpose also of the verification is really to determine whether the voters had really, number one, understood what they have signed, and number two, that they have freely signed such a document.
Pero Chairman, otherwise, other than receiving any complaints to the contrary, there will be presumption of regularity if the signatures match.
That's right po, you're correct, Sir Ed, and therefore we'll just rely on what is contained, what is the record before the Comelec. That is what is also contained in the guidelines of 2020.
Chairman, ano po, pasingit pa ako. In 2006, I remember that Supreme Court ruled against the Lambino petition. Was it 2006? Against the Lambino petition, finding several grounds for failure in their People's Initiative. Among them, hindi ata na ilatag na maigi sa kanilang petition yung kanilang gustong
Ito yung sinasabi na sufficiency in form and substance.
Can you run us through can you run us through the main points that we will have to watch out for that yung taong bayan pag tiningnan natin tong mga petition na ito pag sinampa na o pati yung mga pirma kung ano yung kailangan nating bantayan na dapat nandun.
Sir Ed, nung unang petisyon, ang tawag natin diyan Santiago versus Comelec case. Sa Santiago versus Comelec case, the petition was thrown out, was dismissed simply because sabi ng Supreme Court there was no enabling law. Yung Republic Act 6735 is not the enabling law, sabi ng Supreme Court, na pwede mag-amend ng saligang batas. Ang sabi po ng Supreme Court, yung provision ng Constitution is not automatically, can be automatically executed. There should be an enabling law.
Okay.
And therefore, Republic Act 6735 at that time, sabi ng Supreme Court, is just a law for purposes of amending local legislation or ordinances. Now, here comes the case of Lambino versus Comelec. In the case of Lambino, naandun pa rin po yung Republic Act 6735. But this time, the petition of Lambino was dismissed simply because only for one reason. Yung po mga signatories, ginawa silang supporting petitioners. Sabi ng Supreme Court, dapat sila ay main petitioners. So, bigla po kayo magtataka, bakit hindi nag-discuss ang Supreme Court na dapat dinismiss din ng Lambino case simply because walang enabling law, walang law na nag-aamen ng Constitution. That's 6735 na dineclare nga nila na not enough law.
Earlier.
Yung po pala, yes, sir. Yung po pala, sila Lambino, nag-file ng motion for reconsideration. In the motion for reconsideration, there was a 2-page ruling by the court, signed by the clerk of court, na kasabi sa last paragraph that 10 justices of the Supreme Court at that time voted that indeed 6735 is the law implementing the provision of the Constitution. So, ngayon po, I think po, Sir Ed and Sir Patrick, yan po palagay ko magiging legal issue ngayon. So, I do not want to be presumptuous that definitely the proper time will come sa amin sa Comelec and sa bandang huli po, the Supreme Court will have to make a definitive ruling as to whether Republic Act 6735 or not is a valid law or is the law implementing the provision of the Constitution.
Pero Chairman, tama ba yung intindi ko? As of the last jurisprudence ng Supreme Court, it appears to be upholding 6735 as the implementing law. Tama ho ba?
So Ed, ayaw ko po muna sagutin yung tanong niyan dahil po siyempre pag pinail sa amin ng petition, isa ako sa mga magdidesisyon at isa ako sa magsasabi whether 6735 is the enabling law or not in accordance with jurisprudence in the interpretation ng ating pong Supreme Court.
Chairman, is it within the purview of the Comelec to determine or decide whether those signatures were properly obtained?
Yes, sir. It is within our jurisdiction. But of course, Sir Patrick, napaka-limited yung pwede namin magawa because we were so limited by the guidelines, yung Comelec Resolution 10650, which was promulgated in 2020.
Because we're hearing a lot of talk about how may binabayaran o
May ayuda.
kapalit ng ayuda or kung ano-ano. So, is it possible for the Comelec to go that deep into investigating these things?
Yes, sir. Definitely, we will be instructing our election officers simply because ganito po yung Sir Patrick. But of course, there should be enough evidence so that we will exclude the signature of a voter. Take note po, hindi naman po pwedeng nag-allege ako dito sa municipality ito, namigay kasi ng ganito, namigay kasi ng ganyan. Yung projects para ng gobyerno, pinamigay na ganyan, kaya pinapirma. Tama po yun kung merong ganong ebidensya, but that cannot affect the entire signature. Paano naman po yung valid yung signature? So dapat po talaga ang ebidensya to be presented is on a per signature basis. Dapat po may ganun. Otherwise, so it's so unfair that we will say, ay nabayaran kasi yung buong bayan na yan Kaya talaga yung buong bayan na yan, tanggal. But what about those who really freely sign the document?
Okay. Yung proseso po ba ng Comelec bukas din sa mga complainant o mga kokontra dun sa
Yes,
People's
sir. Yes, sir.
Initiative?
Definitely. Sa opisina po namin kasi gagawin ng verification at we gave the instruction that we will allow definitely the public and everybody to observe and be there during the verification process. Although, Sir Patrick, Sir Ed, later pa po yun. Masyado pa pong malayo sa hininga yon dahil nga hihintayin pa natin. Baka naman biglang hindi i-file pala yung petition. Baka naman maya-maya nangongolekta lang ng signatures, wala naman palang petition na mapafile sa Comelec.
Sir, ba't sila mangongolekta ng signature kung...
Alam nyo kasi, Sir Ed,
Sir
Ed, walang expiry date yung signatures.
Oo nga, sir. Walang expiry date eh. So in other words, they're not constrained by any timetable except yung kung gusto ba nila mangyari ito bago mag-midterm o bago mag-presidential election. Otherwise, bahala sila sa buhay nila kung kailan nila gusto.
Yes, sir, that's right po. Yun po. And of course, yung natanong na rin po ako kanina kung pwede bang isabay yung plebisito ng isang constitutional amendment sa mismong national and local election. Nagkaroon po kasi ng desisyon ng Korte Suprema before, sabi niya, hindi. Kasi hanggat maaari, dapat nakafocus lang ang tao doon sa issue whether really to amend such provision of the Constitution or not and to elect their own leader. So, dapat po magka-separate po yun. Hindi pa pwede as much as possible na pagsabayin.
Okay. Sir, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. Dami yung trabaho gagawin. Dumagdag ito.
But of course, this is a constitutional duty. Ang sa atin lang po, sana panawagan natin sa ating mga kababayan, basta kung hindi nyo po naiintindihan, wag po nyo pipirmahan. Ganun po ang nature natin bilang human being. We do not really sign kung hindi natin naunawa, naiintindihan because may implikasyon sa ating pamumuhay. Yun naman pong talagang gustong pumirma at pumapayag sila, wala po makakapigil sa inyo because this is a free country and that's really part of the process.
Chairman, just to qualify one more thing, kasi I read a couple of days ago that the Comelec, I think it was you who was quoted as saying na under the Comelec resolution on the People's Initiative guidelines, bawal ang magbigay ng pera, pero pag government funds or public funds, I think that's specific in the resolution bawal ang public funds in order to buy votes or support for People's Initiative. I'm wondering naman, that's pretty specific naman, pero I'm wondering what if it's private funds?
Galing sa bulsa.
Kung galing sa bulsa kung hindi mapatunayan na galing sa gobyerno, o kaya galing daw sa mga taga-suporta, o mga ganon. Is there any limitation there?
Ako po, Sir Ed, dahil nakikinig naman at manunood sa inyong napakalawak na programa, ang mga local comment, kung may mapapatunay talaga na private fund yun, ako po, regardless whether it's public or private, then it's not given freely by our voters kung ganon. So that should be excluded. That signature should be excluded. That is my personal view po. Simply because to me, the reason why you are asking for a people's initiative is because it's the people really asking to amend the Constitution.
Bukal sa loob talaga.
Iba yung dahilan kung bakit sila nag-initiate o bakit sila pumirma, so hindi po tamang yung signature na yon ay makonsider po ng Commission on Elections.
But would it be tantamount as well to vote buying? I know it's not really a vote per se, pero is it something
Signature buying.
Signature buying.
Actually po, Sir Ed, Sir Patrick, yun nga po yung isang palaisipan hanggang ngayon. Simply because wala pa po tayo sa election period. Yung pong vote buying.
Lusot yan, the usual.
Will only come in kapag pumasok na yung election period. Wala pa po tayong election period sa kasalukuyan. So, kunyari po, yung pong jurisdiction, wala rin pong jurisdiction ng Comelec. For example, namigay yung barangay officials, ang may jurisdiction dyan, DILG. Ang namigay local officials, kung sino man yung ano man yung posisyon, ang Office of the Ombudsman po ang may jurisdiction. But as far as the Comelec is concerned, wala po kaming jurisdiction. So, pag tinilan nyo nga po yung sinate nyo, Sir Ed, na resolution namin, hindi po siyang maliwanag kung paano namin ipapatupad yung sinasabing bawal ang paggamit ng public funds. So whether public or private, but ako personally, then that should be removed because hindi ito freely given by our people.
Sabi nga kahapon ni Senator Amy Marcos, mga kontratista daw ginagamit. Yun ang balitang dumarating sa kanya. Chairman, do these signature forms indicate, the ones that are being submitted to the Comelec offices, do they indicate who is behind them? Sino yung nagpapapirma?
May nakalagay pong name doon sa form na siya po yung pinaka-ino-authorize ng mga signatories na magre-represent sa kanila, and at the same time more or less nakalagay na rin po doon kung sino yung magiging kasama sa main petitioner doon po sa petition na kung sakasakali ipapile po sa atin. Hopefully po sana makakuha kayo ng snapshot ng picture man lang nung mismong form at hindi na po manggaling sa akin kung sino yung name na nakalagay po doon.
Pero po, doon po sa signatories, yung mga di umunay pumirma doon sa signature sheet, what else has to be there as far as the signatories are concerned? Do they also have to indicate, for example, contact number, addresses, and so on down the line? O simpleng pirma lang? Kasi kung simple pirma lang, kung parang chicken scratch yun, parang kung doktor ang pumirma, di ba? Hindi mo maintindihan. members are concerned.
Dapat po, nandun siyempre yung first name, middle name, and then
So, the line
first
was,
name, middle name, at saka family name. Dapat nandun. Address, at the same time, kasama na rin po ang precinct number and the barangay of the voter. Dapat po kumpleto yung kasi po yun ang gagamitin namin basihan sa amin pong verification. And of course, the form should contain what is the provision of the Constitution that they wanted to amend. And specific po doon na kanya kayo mismo talaga yung wordings per wordings including the comma nung mismong provision of the Constitution that will be amended and the proposed amendment.
that's pretty specific, ha? Doon sa mga signatories, ha? Pati yung precinct number, tama, Chairman, precinct number.
At address, precinct number, family name, middle name, at saka po first name.
Also for ease of verification, I suppose.
Yes, sir.